Jack, do you remember what day tomorrow is?
Shut up! Shut up! Shut up! Shut up!
If you ask the average Metal Gear fan who their least favorite character is, most of them would say Raiden in Metal Gear Solid 2.
Did you say nerd?
Not nerd, node.
Oh.
But if you give them a little more time to think it over, they would probably change their answer to Rose.
So, Jack, what do you want?
What do I want? Well, I'd like to save, if that's okay.
Then go ahead.
This is a joke, right? Rose.
What now?
For over a decade since the release of Metal Gear Solid 2: Sons of Liberty, many fans have criticized Rose for being a nagging succubus bitch who keeps pestering Raiden about what day tomorrow is, or how his room is sparsely decorated, and other seemingly trivial things that distracts Raiden from completing his mission.
Why, Jack? Why?
Listen, Rose, I'm right in the middle of a mission and
Why? Why can't you relax when you're with me?
Look, the mission,
Why don't you open up to me?
Ironically, Hideo Kojima himself said that his favorite scene in MGS2 was when Raiden and Rose talked about the day they met. So at least Kojima doesn't share the fanbase's hatred for Rose. Apart from Raiden, Rose has probably gotten the most vicious negative reception from the Metal Gear community. However, in Metal Gear Solid 4, Raiden's character was revamped to appeal to the masses as a brooding cyborg badass who cuts shit up. Meanwhile, Rose continues to nag the player with mundane information about their sight gauge. The only amusement most people got from Rose in MGS4 was the ability to shake her boobs with a 6-axis controller. By Metal Gear Rising, Rose had been marginalized to a footnote. She gets a passing reference here and there, but for newcomers who played Rising first, you'd be forgiven for not realizing that Raiden has a wife and son. Rose's absence in Metal Gear Rising was most likely due to the fact that Kojima had no involvement with the game's script whatsoever. But still, what was Kojima's intentions with Rose in the first place? To most, it seems that her only role was to annoy the player, that she's an expendable character, and it's great that Rising treats her that way. But what if I told you that Rose wasn't an expendable character? What if I told you that there was a point to all of those distracting calls? What if I told you that Rose is actually the key to truly understanding Metal Gear Solid 2? Don't believe me? Well, keep watching to find out why. The first thing to keep in mind when analyzing Metal Gear's story and characters is that it's always important to take Hideo Kojima's intentions into account. With a series like Metal Gear Solid, story and author are inextricably intertwined. Kojima uses his work as a vehicle to convey his own thoughts, feelings, and worldview. One example of this is his portrayal of women. In the past, Kojima has been criticized for his provocative portrayal of women, bordering on sheer perversion. These complaints aren't entirely without merit, but for the most part, women in Hideo Kojima games are very well characterized, fleshed out, and even charismatic. But of course, Kojima is a man, and as he himself admits, most of the women in his games are based off of his personal fantasies of women. There is, however, one exception.
But that said, I think there was one female character, Rose, and I think she wasn't too popular. I don't know, do you guys not like her? And ironically, she was the one female character that I kind of tried to base on actual people that I knew. So she was based on past girlfriends or, female acquaintances that I've known. And, she was supposed to be the character who even, within this fantasy game where these men were going to war, she was like the real character who would come and talk to the player. And ironically, nobody liked her.
In other words, Rose was the first, and possibly the only, female character Kojima created that was based on his real-world experience with women. In a fantasy war game, Kojima intended Rose to be the player's connection to reality. Okay, but what does this have to do with Rose's constant nagging? Why is she bugging Raiden in the middle of battle? Well, actually, Rose's constant nagging only occurs when the player is out of enemy sight after the player voluntarily saves their game. If Raiden is in alert mode, Rose simply gives him words of encouragement. But even if Rose's conversations didn't put Raiden in danger, why does she even bother? After all, as the Rose haters are so quick to point out, Raiden is on an incredibly important mission. He has to defuse dangerous explosives, kill terrorists, stop a potential environmental catastrophe, and save the president. All Rose ever did was distract players on their super important mission. But here's the thing. Those bombs weren't placed in any dangerous spots, and in fact, defusing them triggered the real bomb threat. Raiden never succeeds in killing any member of Dead Cell, apart from Fat Man, who the terrorist leader wanted to kill anyway.
King, Fat Man is dead.
It doesn't matter. Saved us the trouble of getting rid of him ourselves.
The environmental threat turned out to be a hoax, and the president is revealed to be nothing more than a pawn for a super-secret organization that secretly controls the United States government. In fact, it's later revealed that said super-secret organization orchestrated the terrorist incident as a test for their social engineering plan.
You think this little terrorist incident is your own doing, Solidus? This is the S3 training kernel. An orchestrated recreation of Shadow Moses.
What?
From the beginning, Raiden's mission was a sham, a fantasy game. He did nothing of importance throughout the entire game. But sure, even this fantasy game of pretend bad guys and pretend heroes still carried some risk to Raiden's life. And yes, Rose was aware of that risk. And that's precisely why she kept distracting him with her calls. While it's true that Rose started her relationship with Raiden simply because she was following orders from the Patriots, eventually she did grow to love Raiden for real.
Jack, I thought I was acting because that was my job. But I did fall in love with you. That wasn't an act.
She truly cared about his well-being, which is why she accepted her role in his mission. But unlike Raiden, Rose was doing something important. Two things, actually. Goal number 1. Ensure that Raiden completed the simulation. This was her Patriot-assigned goal, though keeping him alive was probably her personal goal as well.
Jack is not simply a field personnel for me to track. His safety comes first to me, not the mission.
How did Rose achieve goal number 1? By repeatedly reminding Raiden of tomorrow, to motivate him to survive and complete the simulation. Recall an early conversation with the Colonel, when Raiden questions the need for Rose's involvement in the mission.
Colonel, I fail to see...
I know your VR training performance in and out, but sometimes that's not enough. You're familiar with the Shadow Moses incident?
You know I covered it in VR.
If there's a crucial tactical detail that case taught us, it was the power of the operative's will to survive.
In Metal Gear Solid 1, Solid Snake's defining characteristic was his survival instinct. He made the impossible possible, no matter the odds.
But if you ask me, there's no happiness to be gained in death. No peace either. I'm gonna leave here alive.
On his simulated mission, Raiden would be exposed to many dangers, from Harrier attack planes to a gazillion Metal Gear rays. But so long as Raiden had the will to survive, he would rise up and overcome any danger he faced. And that's where Rose came in.
Jack?
What?
Do you know what day it is tomorrow?
Rose ensured, through her reminders of tomorrow, that Raiden would never give up, no matter how crazy things got.
What is it, Rose? Talk to me.
I'd rather you figure it out. It's important.
How important?
Important enough? And we'll talk about it tomorrow.
Why not now?
Tomorrow seems more appropriate. I need all the help I can get so that I won't chicken out anyway.
Is that the reason you decided to be part of this mission? Okay, I'm gonna finish this thing by tomorrow no matter what.
Now, some of you might be thinking, but Dragonblade, Rose going on and on about April 30th wasn't encouraging. It was annoying, both for us and for Raiden. Well, first of all, Rose only brings up April 30th 4 times. Enough times to keep it on Raiden's mind, but not enough times to justify these overblown exaggerations from the fan base. Second of all, in one instance, Raiden was the one who brought it up.
And I do think about you. I'm trying to remember what's so special about April 30th.
While you, the player, may not care about April 30th, Raiden does. And learning its significance is what motivated him to stay alive.
You need to stay alive so you can.
Okay, that's a deal.
But notice how she uses the promise of tomorrow to motivate Raiden, rather than the importance of the mission itself. Surely, stopping a terrorist threat would be motivation enough, right? Which brings us to goal number 2, helping Raiden realize the truth about everything. The truth about herself, the mission, and most importantly, Raiden himself. This was Rose's ulterior motive throughout the game. How did she achieve goal number 2? By constantly asking Raiden uncomfortable, pointed personal questions at the worst possible times. There are many layers to this goal, so let's break it down. 1. The truth behind Rose.
What I really wanted was for you to see the real me. It hurt to play out this artificial romance.
Rose wants Raiden to realize the truth, but as a Patriot spy, she couldn't tell him the whole truth without disobeying her orders. So, she left clever hints in her dialogue with Raiden.
But he's got no right to go around pretending he's got a prosthetic leg. That's an insult to people who really can't walk.
Everyone's got their own reasons. Sometimes you've got no choice but to lie.
You're right. I guess it is necessary sometimes.
Rose?
It's nothing. Well, see ya. I want to be recognized, first of all, for who I really am, especially by you. I don't want you, of all people, thinking that I'm just your girlfriend.
You sure know a lot about parakeets.
I had my own once.
I didn't know that.
I never mentioned it?
No, this is the first time.
Really?
Yeah, there's probably a lot of other things that I don't know about you yet.
Yeah, actually, well, there's a lot more.
Rose?
Jack,
What?
after this mission is over, let's talk about lots of things.
Yeah, let's.
Good luck. I'm just saying you're different from your usual restrained self.
What about you then?
I always want to be open with you as much as I can. And I have no idea what's making you suffer so much. That's hard for me. If only you'd talk to me about it.
There are some things I want you to understand without me having to explain.
You can't possibly expect me to...
Rose.
I guess you're right. Maybe if I were a better match for you, I could understand without being told. But I guess I'm not. I guess I'm just too different.
Rose, that's...
Not true?
Yeah, you're perfect for me. The ideal woman, so to speak.
Ideal?
Yeah.
If I was...
What are you trying to say?
Nothing. Never mind. Sorry, I was about to say something stupid. Get back to the mission.
Notice how, in each of these conversations, Rose plants very subtle clues for Raiden to connect the dots on his own. Sadly, Raiden, like most players, merely took these conversations at face value and failed to see the underlying meaning of Rose's behavior.
You refused to see me for what I was. I lied to you, but I wanted to be caught. You pretended to be understanding, to be a gentleman. You never made a conscious attempt to reach out to me. The only time you did was when I gave you no choice but to do so.
2. The truth about Raiden and the mission. Again, some of you might be thinking, but Dragonblade, there's one thing you can't deny, and that's how much Raiden loathes her calls and wants her to shut up so that he can get back to the mission. Oh, really?
Jack, do you remember the day we met?
I'm kind of busy right now, Rose.
You're right, sorry.
If Raiden had been so uninterested in Rose's relationship talk, he would have ended the conversation right there. After all, he's on an incredibly important mission, right? Surely, Raiden wouldn't want to be distracted when he has bombs to worry about. But he didn't end the conversation.
I do remember. It was right after I transferred to New York. There are all these tourists around you in front of the Federal Hall.
This isn't the only conversation where Raiden doesn't prioritize the mission.
Jack, how's the mission going?
Fine.
Fine? Is that it?
Look, I really don't feel like talking about the mission. At least with you. I want to talk about something else.
In fact, the only time Raiden does prioritize the mission is when Rose tries to have Raiden open up to her.
Is this really the time to bring this up?
Why, Jack? Why?
Listen, Rose, I'm right in the middle of a mission and
Why? Why can't you relax when you're with me?
Look, the mission,
Why don't you open up to me?
Rose,
This is the only time Raiden prioritizes the mission over talking with Rose. But is it really because Raiden cares about the mission, or is there some other reason?
Okay then, let's talk about you.
Me?
Yeah, your least favorite subject.
That's not...
Oh yeah? Then go ahead and say something.
Like what?
Anything. Tell me something about yourself.
I can't think of anything interesting to say. Why do you want to talk about me so badly?
Because I'm curious.
But why?
Is it really that strange to want to know more about someone you love? Jack, I've been thinking for a long time. You've got a no trespassing sign pasted on your heart.
What?
No entry beyond this point. You've got it written all over your heart.
That's ridiculous.
Don't try to deny it. You know I'm right. Stop lying to me.
Notice how dodgy Raiden is whenever Rose asks about his past. He never acted this way when she talked about the day they met. It's only when Rose brings up Raiden's past that the mission suddenly becomes important to him. The mission is Raiden's excuse to avoid the personal problems he's keeping from Rose.
We'll talk about it tomorrow.
Why does it have to be tomorrow?
So I can build up enough courage first. And so you won't run away.
I would never do something like that.
Liar. Every time I want to talk about something, you suddenly remember that you have some work you have to do, or you get a stomachache.
Hey, that's not...
You know it's true. What are you so afraid of?
And the irony of it all is that it's later revealed that Raiden's mission was a hoax from the beginning.
We used Shadow Moses as a paradigm for the exercise.
I wonder if you would have preferred a fantasy setting.
We chose that backdrop because of its extreme circumstances. It was an optimal test for S3's crisis management capacity. If the model could trigger, control, and solve this, it would be ready for any contingency. And now, we have our proof.
Raiden, like the player, is using the mission, the game, to avoid their problems.
What I hate more than anything else in the world is my own past. I didn't want you or anyone to know about it.
The truth about the mission that Rose wanted Raiden to realize is that it was an illusion tailored to his escapist fantasies. The truth about himself that Rose wanted Raiden to realize is that he had real problems that he could not and should not escape from by blindly buying into this fake mission. Rose was trying to break Raiden out of his denial and remind him of what was truly important. But that begs the question, why? Why would Rose go through all this trouble? Why would she try to make Raiden see the truth, knowing how he would suffer in facing his denial?
I don't want to share my past with anyone. I just want to forget about it.
She did it because it was precisely that denial that allowed the Patriots to victimize him in the first place.
Solidus raised plenty of other child soldiers. Do you know why we chose you over them? It was because you were the only one who refused to acknowledge the past. All the others remember what they were and pay for it daily.
But you turn your back on everything you don't like. You do whatever you like, see only the things you like, and for yourself alone.
Rose realized this and was trying to save Raiden from being a blind victim. She was trying to give him a real choice, a human choice. Now, more importantly, why would Kojima go through all this trouble? Remember, Kojima said he based Rose on real women in his life, so that, even in a fantasy war game, Rose would be the player's connection to reality. Why would he do this? Well, the answer is actually pretty simple. Raiden is the player. Everything the player does, Raiden does, and vice versa. Just as the player is playing a fantasy game and pretending it's real, Raiden is also playing a fantasy game and pretending it's real. Just as the player wanted to play all of MGS2 as Solid Snake, Raiden aspires to imitate Solid Snake.
I've completed 300 missions in VR. I feel like some kind of legendary mercenary.
Raiden is the player, and his denial of his true self parallels the player's denial of their own true self. Kojima is no ordinary game designer. He crafts each of his games with a lesson in mind that he wants to pass down to players.
You mustn't allow yourself to be chained to fate, to be ruled by your genes. Humans can choose the type of life they want to live. The important thing is that you choose life, and then live.
But while MGS1 was a surprise success, Kojima was worried about whether or not his message truly got through to players. When Kojima looked at all of the young people who measured their self-worth by their VR scores, by how snake-like they could be, he saw people who disliked their real selves enough to want to replace those selves with a fantasy persona. They were people with no identity of their own.
There wasn't anything in your room. Only a bed and a small desk. It looked like a prison cell.
Rose?
No television set. No family pictures. Not even a poster.
Rose, I only use that room for sleeping.
A lifeless room. Almost like your empty heart.
Instead of choosing life, these kids chose an escapist fantasy. As the man who had accidentally passed down this fantasy, Kojima felt a duty to pass down something that could undo that damage, to snap these youngsters out of their denial and make them face up to the reality of their real lives, and more importantly, their real selves.
それで作ったんですけども、メタルギアソリッドでスネークが人気が出てしまって、ある種偶像になってしまったんですよ。キャラクター性がついてしまったので、そのキャラクターを、いろんな人が操作するのが非常に難しくなったということで、2ではライデンを主人公にしてスネークを客観的に見れるような、キャラクターの関係を作った。
This is why Kojima based Rose on real women in his life, and why he had her interrupt Raiden and the player on their mission, to remind them of their lives outside of war, outside of the game. Most of us probably won't have to deal with fat roller skating maniacs, vampires, or saving the world from terrorists. These are all simply fantasies that we indulge in. But most of us probably will find ourselves in a real relationship with a real person and struggle with real problems. In many ways, Rose is like Metal Gear Solid 2 itself. She's beautiful and intelligent, but ultimately a deception. Players expected MGS2 to be a straightforward sequel starring Solid Snake, only to feel betrayed when the game was revealed to be part of Kojima's elaborate social experiment. Likewise, Rose is introduced as simply a normal girl who's worried about her boyfriend. But in reality, her ulterior motive was to get him to look past his fictional mission and see things for what they are. Aboard Arsenal Gear, the truth about Raiden is laid bare, literally. With Solid Snake now at his side, Raiden can no longer pretend to be Solid Snake. Here, Raiden admits the truth about himself.
I lied, Snake. I have more field experience than I can remember. It's not VR that's doing this to me.
At last, Raiden reveals the ugly truth of his past.
I'm Jack the Ripper, a dirty reminder of a terrible mistake.
Kojima wanted players to accept the sad, unflattering reality of themselves. But more importantly, Kojima also wanted to give them hope.
You can stop being part of a mistake, starting now.
He wanted to teach players that they don't have to live their lives perpetuating their mistakes, that they can start over and choose their own legacy.
You can find your own name, and your own future.
Decide for myself?
And whatever you choose will be you.
At the beginning of the game, players are asked to input their name and information. This information later appears on Raiden's dog tags, representing the player's control over him. In this scene, Raiden rejects the player's control. He rejects the fantasy that the Patriots tried to impose on him, and he rejects allowing his tragic childhood to determine who he is. He declares that he will find his own name and his own life. When asked about his favorite moments in the series, Hideo Kojima listed the scene where Raiden throws his dog tags, explaining that it was very representative of the theme he wanted to portray in the game. An argument can be made that, prior to Metal Gear Solid 4, Kojima intended all of MGS2 to be a virtual reality mission. But the significance of Raiden's choices remains the same, even if everything that happened in front of Federal Hall was merely a hallucination. As Snake himself said,
There's no such thing in the world as absolute reality. Most of what they call real is actually fiction. What you think you see is only as real as your brain tells you it is. It's not whether you are right or wrong, but how much faith you are willing to have that decides the future.
Here, Hideo Kojima, through Solid Snake, is acknowledging that, virtual reality or not, Metal Gear Solid 2 is a work of fiction, a fantasy game. But he wants players to use what they learned through this fictional experience to better their own lives.
I know you didn't have much in terms of choices this time. But everything you felt, thought about during this mission is yours. And what you decide to do with them is your choice.
You mean start over?
Yeah, a clean slate, a new name, new memories. Choose your own legacy. It's for you to decide. It's up to you.
When Snake explains how he will continue his fight against the Patriots, Raiden offers to help him, but Snake refuses. Snake tells Raiden to stop following in his footsteps, that he should live his own life, a life with Rose. Snake tells Raiden to find his own reality. Rose is how Raiden finds it.
Can I ask you something? Who am I, really?
I wouldn't know. But we're going to find out together, aren't we?
Oh. Yeah.
See me for what I am, okay?
I know.
When Raiden chooses a life with Rose, a life not of defeating terrorists, but of changing diapers and telling bedtime stories, he acknowledges his true desires and duties. By proposing to Rose, Raiden no longer allows Patriot-controlled society to define who he is, and nor does he allow Solidus's childhood conditioning to define his future. By proposing to Rose, Raiden finally chooses to find his own name and his own life. But sadly, no one got it.